Hi, my name's Kate and these are the 31 ink pieces I painted last October. This video is a look at the supplies I used, how I kept myself organised, and the method I ended up developing by doing the same thing for 31 days in a row. I didn't stick to the official Inktober prompt list, instead I followed a Les-Mis-themed one, but I did complete all 31 traditionally inked pieces throughout the month, and I'm keen to share what I learned from the process. I know Inktober can be a bit of a daunting, self-inflicted project, but it was really fun. I noticed a big increase in my technical skill level, as well as things like my drafts getting more dynamic as I tried to avoid repeating the same poses and expressions. It was a huge challenge, but it's pretty cool what a bit of pressure can do, so I really encourage anyone who's interested to give it a go. While this video looks at the items and supplies I used throughout the month, I have another on my channel that covers the actual art approach. It goes from initial concept through all the masking and inking and finishes up with the digital tweaks that turned the piece that follows into the cover of the zine I published this year. Zines and stickers are available from my Etsy store. I'll link that in the description below, but otherwise I hope you get something of value out of today's video. Thanks! I'll try and do this in a sort of chronological order to the process that I used. The first thing in my box was my brick, which I did carry with me for the first 2 weeks. So the list went live about a week into September, and then there was 3 weeks of planning and then the daily drawing. After that, once I had the prompts, I would go into my iPad and I made a little folder. As I kind of committed to certain prompts, I could fill them in, sketch little concepts. I had these little restrictions in place on top of having to fit the prompt word. I wanted to do traditional ink paintings because I had never used ink, and I know that I like to learn things by giving myself really hard assignments. I wanted them to all be brick accurate, like canon specific from the novel, as opposed to the musical, which is what I'm very familiar with. I wanted everything to be black and red. I wanted things to break the borders. I wanted every character to get a solo piece. I found drafting digitally saved me so much time. It let me play around with values and how I wanted to do that. Let me thumbnail essentially and figure out where I wanted to include the red. So drafting digitally was kind of essential for this intensity of a project. I had a separate document where I would resize to fit the A5. I was using A5 hot press Araldo watercolor paper. I really like this. I haven't really used much else. It does what I want it to do. I'm a control freak and I really like hot press watercolor paper. Once I was happy with that, I printed draft versions of all of them. I don't print a lot of my stuff. I rarely see it off screen. So getting the chance to like see them in real size and to touch them and to move them around and see how they were looking, that was really awesome. So that was the digital aspect all finished up. And then I kind of was aware that I'd never used inks before or done very ink heavy work. Like I'd used fine liners and stuff for line art, but I'd never done like inking. I started in this book. This is just a regular sketchbook, and I rented a book from the library about inking and kind of made some notes about things like values, the power of line, gradients, how it acts like watercolor and how it differs. Like I work in watercolor a lot, so I'm very comfortable with that, but suddenly having to factor in for like ink's ability to layer, that took me a while to wrap my head around, and so having some practice runs at that was great, was a good idea. Thank you, past Caitlin. And then this was my kind of when I was getting really into the month in particular and seeing how like the masking fluid interacted with the ink or how the washi tape interacted with the ink. I also use these books to tape my A5 pages to stretch them and to make the borders neat. So that was some fun little practice before getting into the official pieces. Once the drafts were printed, I would transfer them onto watercolor paper using my light box, which is this box. Made it myself. And since there were so many pieces, trying to keep them organized was quite a task. I was working on things in batches. I found that made my time more efficient. Like I would get into that flow zone, or I'd be waiting for something to dry and I could work on something else while I was doing that. I found this nifty accordion folder thing. It has 5 sections. There was my to-do list. It had the prompts all written out, a table of the kind of 9 to 11 steps that needed to be undertaken for every piece, and then any extra ideas, things I wanted to do some reference studies of prior to, like elephants. I'd never drawn an elephant in my life. I'd never drawn rats. I'd not done bayonets. I don't love researching canon accurate stuff. That's why I don't usually draw it, but I wanted to challenge myself and it was part of the experience. That was the main plan. There was also many supplemental plans, none of which make sense to me now, but all were like what was getting me through during October. Looking at the 5 sections, so the front section is needs line art. So those were the ones that I had printed already. They were all sorted. I'd used the light box and I'd got the pencil lines down. And then first step was you do the basic line art. And then that goes into the second section, which is needs masking. I didn't use masking fluid on every piece, but I used it a lot and I really enjoyed the control that it gave me over certain areas. Once that was masked, it would go into needs painting, or it would just jump masking and go straight into needs painting. And that's where all the inking and the paint goes. Then there's needs details. That's when I go back with like my 01 or my 005 micron liner, and I would add in those little etchy shapes. I've never done those and I'm not very good at those, but I really wanted to, I love that style and I really wanted to challenge myself to do that. And once those were done, they would go in the end section, which is needs scanning. Throughout the month, I scanned them in at my mum's house, or I photographed them so that I could upload them daily. But once the month finished, I took all of my pieces into my local photography shop and asked them to professionally scan them all because I want to print them, and why not? It's so fun, treat yourself, right? Those sections kept me really organized and I could kind of visualize how much work needed to be done depending on which sections were biggest. And also, like, if I was in the mood to paint, I could just go to the needs painting section, get a little bit ahead there. But it was important to play to my mood and what I wanted to do to keep it enjoyable. So to look at the supplies that I used, I guess the main thing is the India ink. I have the black Holcroft Professional India ink. It's got an eyedropper. It's very, very black. Woo! Oh, it's been so long. It's great. I've never really used any other India ink before. It did what I wanted it to do. I found it really easy to work with. Yeah, I don't know what else I can say. The other big name was the masking fluid that I used. I got the Jackson's one for my birthday from my mom. It cost like $5. It smells a little like there's quite a scent to it. I did lose 2 brushes to using this and a lot of time to trying to like pick the bits out of the brushes. I've since seen a tutorial that involves like dishwashing soap. So I'm going to be trying that later when I'm painting to see if that works. I used washi tape for the edges of my pieces. They're like 12mm wide, so all of my edges are 12mm, and then I would cut in very gently, like kiss cut into the washi tape around the bits that I wanted to break out of the borders. And then I used this painter's tape that my dad, who is a house painter, gave me for Christmas. This is the size of the panel at the bottom of my paintings where the quote goes. You didn't see them throughout the month, but they're in the book. It was important to me to leave like enough room for 3 lines. And then this is what I would tape it down to the books with as well. My palettes that I love, literally cannot recommend hard enough, life hack of my life. I felt so smart when I thought about it. Ice cube trays, like they hold fluid, right? So these are my ice cube trays. Because I was so limited in color, my values were really important to creating some sort of contrast. So I needed to have a lot of different values available to me at the same time. I had this one and I also had this one. I do 4 at a time. So like take these 4 for example. I'll put the ink in solid, maybe like a tiny bit of water because I find the ink dries really quick. Put a few drops of ink in, tiny bit of water, and then fill this one up with like 2 brushes full of water, and then mix the inky one and then mix that into there, and then do it again. 2 brushes full of clean water, grab the next value, pull it over, and it just creates like quite a consistent dilution. And maybe I would then go up here and add a super washed out one for like shadows on white shirts. I was so good at keeping this clean for like the first 4 days, and then I just couldn't care anymore. I didn't have capacity. You know your limits, right? It was fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. The other important thing that I don't know if, like, everyone kind of gets, you get 2 cups of water when you're doing that. I'm very space conscious. So instead of 2 different cups of water, I hit up the thrift store and I found this guy. It's a little Tupperware container and it's got 3 different sections, which was great for me. I was only using 2 colors. So I would have a section to wash off the black inky brush and a section to wash off the red watercolor brush, and then a section for clean water to do the final clean. So that was just made for me basically. And it has Garfield on it. What a great thing, right? There's Garfield. It's so good. It's all right. Makes me so happy. I also had paper towel because that is important, and there was a lot of mistakes made where I put down the wrong ink and I had to very quickly pat that off. Watercolor wise, I have a Daler Rowney set. I really love this set. They're really vibrant. There is 18 colors, I think. I'm not gonna count them right now. I use the Cool Red. I don't know the name of it. It's the only one that really has a dent in it in the whole palette. Here's my mechanical pencil. It's a Bic Velocity 0.7. I don't have to sharpen it and it has an eraser attached to it. Both of these things were essential to me. I don't like having to stop. I just want it all in one hand and I don't want to put it down. Have a knittable eraser. I've got my Pigma Micron fine liners. I used, so 0.3 were my thickest lines. 0.1 was for hair. Like, so if you're lining the hair, you'd have your thickest lines on the outside bit, and then to put more detail in the hair was the 0.1. And then I would go back in with the 0.05 and do etchy little shadowy details, especially on like the barricade and that. I didn't really do that on skin, but I tried to do that on fabrics and stuff to kind of differentiate a texture between skin and not skin. So those and my pencil and my eraser all live in this funky little carry tray. It just keeps it from getting mixed up. My main brushes also lived in there just so they wouldn't get hurt rolling around in this box in my car. I used quite a selection of brushes, but these were kind of my main, these were my main ones. This one is the one that I pretty much painted everything with. Again, control freak, need to learn to use a bigger brush. I know this about me, we all have our flaws. This is about as big as I go. It was only 8.5, so I feel like I'm entitled. I'm entitled to my ½ inch, like an inch. I don't know, I don't use inches. I'm Australian, let me be. This was my X-Acto knife. I use this to cut the washi tape to break the borders. And then there is it's mine. And then there's my trial sheets. Whenever I was mixing inks, I would make little swatches to make sure that there was enough contrast in the values to be bothered to stay with, or if anything needed tweaking. It was important to use the same type of paper that I was painting on because there are variances between paper brands and paper presses. This was seeing how the blacks and reds interacted a bit. And then here was doing like little mock-ups of some of the ones that I wasn't super sure on how I wanted to paint. And then this bad boy teams up with this guy and this funky $30 work light that comes with a hook. And I used to light the room that is very dark. I'm filming in the very hot day because it's too dark to film at night. So that goes in there like that. This is an old photo frame. It was 50 cents at an op shop. This box was free because it was a gift box, but would have cost maybe $5 at Red Dot. I lined it with some alfoil to help bounce the light around and taped all the edges to keep it safe because I have a 4-year-old and we are very hazard conscious. And this was my light box. It's about an A4 size. It let me move things around. It was great. That's all the stuff that I used every day of October. I found it really handy having a box. I literally use these items at least for 2 weeks solid of the month. So can recommend. If you have any questions, let me know. Oh, I'm gonna say bye now because it's getting really hot. Okay, thanks for watching.